In the 70s, today's band went on a crazy commercial roller coaster through the music industry. And they started off slow with their first few records, but then they unexpectedly rose to the top of the tracks with a foreign import of all things. From there, they started piling up platinum hits, and they seemed like they'd coast right through the 80s. Then they hit a wall. This iconic band plummeted. Their next 5 albums tanked, and so in a last-ditch effort to save this band's career, their label hired a team of outside songwriters to basically just write this album for them. This didn't go over very well with the band, but from it came the band's biggest chart hit ever. Although loved by listeners, the band actually hated it so much, when they first heard it, their guitarist smashed the demo tape under the heel of his boot. This episode, I'm telling you, hell of a ride here. It's going to be fun. Get ready next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember having a TV dinner in front of the boob tube back in the day, 70s, 80s, you're going to dig this channel of pure musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Check the notification bell so you always get our new interviews, our new stories and videos. We also have a Patreon. You're definitely going to want to check that out. Insider access to stuff you won't find anywhere else. You can become an honorary producer and help us curate this music history. It's very important. Also check out our merch below. So for today's episode, we're covering a comeback band who made it really big in the 70s. Then they fell out of the spotlight. Then they made it even bigger in the late 80s with a song that the band hated, but the fans loved it. Talking about Cheap Trick and the story of their 1988 mega smash, The Flame. Cheap Trick, of course, comprised of Rob and Zander on vocals and guitar, Rick Nielsen on lead guitar, Tom Peterson on bass, and Bunny Carlos on drums. They released their eponymous debut album on February 3rd of 1977. Unfortunately, the album went nowhere, and it was virtually unnoticed in the US. It failed to break into the Billboard 200 at all, and sold, I think, about 150,000 copies, but that's because the band became famous later. But from there, things didn't get a lot better. Their next 2 offerings, 1977's In Color and 1978's Heaven Tonight, they at least reached the Billboard Albums chart, but they went to number 73 and number 48. Wasn't much to brag about. Now that being said, Heaven Tonight did feature the Cheap Trick essential track Surrender. Put them on the map. Three albums in, Cheap Trick, they'd yet to make their mark. But the silver lining through all this was that they had built up a cult following in Japan. Yep, they were big in Japan. Their albums were going gold and fans treated them like rock royalty over there. So later in 1978, moved to capitalize on the Far East fan base, the band released Cheap Trick at Budokan. The record was recorded live in Japan, and it was initially intended only for overseas release, but it actually became so popular in Japan that Cheap Trick's label Epic opted to release it as an import here in the States. This would turn out to be their breakthrough record, reaching a lofty number 4 position on the Billboard 200. This collection was powered by their well-known live version of I Want You to Want Me. Great song. Cheap Trick at Budokan would reach triple platinum here in the US, and retroactively, both In Color and Heaven Tonight would hit 1 million in US as well as a result of that. So building on that success, Cheap Trick released Dream Police in 1979, which actually almost matched Budokan's chart standing. It scored an impressive number 6 ranking, and it sold 1 million US copies. Also featured the number 26 self-titled single. And by the time the curtain closed on the 70s, Cheap Trick had unquestionably hit their commercial stride, and they were poised to climb to even greater heights in the 80s. However, in the neon decade, things wouldn't exactly go as planned. Bassist Tom Peterson left the band after the George Martin-produced All Shook Up came out in '80. He was first replaced by Pete Comita and then by John Brandt. Cheap Trick's next 4 '80s albums, they would all struggle mightily. They averaged about a number 63 spot on the Billboard 200, not something the record labels would like. One on One, Next Position, Please, and Standing on the Edge, they all failed to release a top 40 single between them. And you know, by the time 1986's The Doctor flatlined at number 115, the band's prognosis, it was looking pretty bleak. Sorry, I had to go there. Was it over for him? Many had to wonder this. Now, to add insult to injury, earlier that year, Cheap Trick had tried to revive their fortunes with a cut on one of the biggest soundtracks of all time, Top Gun. Co-written by Harold Faltermeyer and Mark Spiro, the high-flying synth rocker called Mighty Wings was released as the album's third single. The track was issued in the wake of two massive hits, the number 2 Danger Zone and the number 1 hit Take My Breath Away. However, Cheap Trick couldn't ride the momentum to come back a victory. Mighty Wings crashed and burned, actually. It failed to chart on the Billboard Hot 100. I thought it was a good song. But you know what? It was a missed golden opportunity. The walls were closing in on this group. They needed a big comeback, or they were likely done. Now, in 1988, they started working on Lap of Luxury. They were gunning for a comeback. It started when the band's original bassist Tom Peterson came back. Peterson met up with his old bandmates while they were mixing The Doctor in '86, and he rejoined before Lap of Luxury was recorded. This was a much-needed boost for this band. For Lap of Luxury, production duties were assigned to Richie Zito, who by this time had a career that had produced records for Tony Basil, Animotion, Joe Cocker, and the great Eddie Money. But you know what? The most notable addition to Lap of Luxury was the arrival of, count 'em, 11 outside songwriters. 11. In a last-gasp bid to turn things around for this backsliding band, Epic Records forced Cheap Trick to work with an extensive team of songwriting specialists. Contributors included Mike Chapman, Holly Knight, John Lind, Todd Cerny, Janet Allen, and the writers of today's track, Bob Mitchell and Nick Graham. Together, this team was responsible for a long list of hits, like Love is a Battlefield, Heart and Soul, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, Crazy for You, and Private Eyes, just to name a few.
Love is a battlefield. Nothing's gonna stop us now. Private eyes, they're watching you.
They were made for the 80s, these guys, these songs. And all these songwriters would receive 15 of the 22 songwriting credits on this album, and they had a hand in every track except 2. Never Had a Lot to Lose. It was written by Zander and Peterson, and there was also the cover of Elvis Presley's Don't Be Cruel.
You know I want you to stay, don't be cruel.
But you know what? Judging from past episodes we've had, this wasn't an unprecedented move for 70s rock bands moving into the 80s. We talked about Heart a few weeks ago. There was outfits like Aerosmith and Starship as well. They all struggled in the early 80s, but had their careers resurrected by outside songwriters. I'm going to play a few. I'm sure you recognize these Song Doctor hits.
This city on rock and roll. Stay any longer, we will surely never get away. Come on, Uncle CD, ragdoll, baby, won't you do me like you done before?
You know what? These songs helped rescue and reinvigorate these bands who were struggling to catch up to what was going on in the 80s. They had to play the game. The hope was this strategy would work for Cheap Trick as well. And Don Grierson, Senior VP of A&R for Epic Records, said, and I quote, "What we attempted to do was make a statement for a band that had lost its mass market appeal. We needed to make a record that sounded contemporary. We addressed all the reasons why Cheap Trick may be in trouble and agreed that certain changes were necessary. We found outside writers the band was comfortable with, who would still make music that sounded like Cheap Trick." End of quote. You'll have to judge if it does. The plan was solid, but that didn't mean Cheap Trick had to like it. Recognizing that they were in a do-or-die situation, guitarist Rick Nielsen admitted, he said Lap of Luxury was a tough record to make. I mean, we could lie to you and tell you it was all wonderful and great. It wasn't. It was tough working with other writers, but it was a lesson for us. You know what? The formula worked. Lap of Luxury reached number 11 in Canada, number 14 in Australia, and went to number 16 here in America. As far as the singles go, though, all 5 placed on the US mainstream rock charts. 4 out of the 5 made it to the Billboard Hot 100. Much better than what had happened before. Leading the pack was today's track, The Flame, Cheap Trick's first and only #1 hit. But close behind it was their cover of Elvis's Don't Be Cruel. That went to #4 as well. The other 3 tracks, Ghost Town, Let Go, and Never Had a Lot to Lose, they all had middle-of-the-road success on the U.S. rock charts, going to #32, #35, and #45. But all in all, it was a far cry from the commercial drought that Cheap Trick had experienced through much of the early 80s into the mid-80s. As for The Flame, there's no doubt that out of all the songs on the album, this was one of the most calculated to check all the commercial boxes. I mean, no question. It was designed to break Cheap Trick into the 80s, power ballad and all. Written by British songwriting duo Bob Mitchell and Nick Graham, the pair had initially written the song for somebody else. Said Graham about it, "We were writing a song for Elkie Brooks. I was producing a track for her album. She asked me to write another song, so Bob and I came up with The Flame, and she didn't like it. Her record company went mad because they thought it was an amazing song, but she just refused to record it. We were already halfway through producing it for her, so I put a vocal on it myself, and we mixed it and sent it out to a couple of people. The Flame, it would spark some really strong feelings one way or another, love or hate, in all those who heard it. Elkie wasn't the only one who disliked the track. We'll just say that. I'll get to that in a minute.
And I feel so lonely.
When the demo eventually found its way to Epic's Don Grierson, though, he presented it to Cheap Trick as an 11th hour addition to Lap of Luxury. Actually, he gave them a choice between 2 songs that he believed were surefire hits. This guy knew his stuff. There was The Flame and the Dionne Warren penned Look Away, which of course became the #1 song of 1989 for Chicago. According to Bunny Carlos, Grierson told them that he had 2 songs for them to choose. He predicted both would be #1 hits. He was going to give one of them to Chicago and the other was for them. But he actually gave Cheap Trick the first pick. The Flame seemed like a better fit, so they went with that, said Carlos. The other one was Look Away, and it sounded like some girl singing on that demo. We really didn't like the song anyway. So sure, we'll do The Flame, we're game. That rhymes. End of quote.
Touching heat, freezing on my skin.
Funny how these things work, though. Years later, we could have just as easily been talking about Cheap Trick's #1 hit, Look Away, and Chicago's #1 hit, The Flame. Both were highly successful, no doubt about it. Maybe Cheap Trick could have talked him into doing both songs. Who knows?
Look away, baby, look away. I pretend you still hold me.
But even though Cheap Trick chose The Flame, not everyone was excited to record this. Picking up the narrative, Bunny Carlos described the recording session saying, "We all got in the room and we did about half a take, and Rick stands up and he goes, 'I hate this thing.' Gets up and he leaves. Tom's like, 'Yeah, I don't want to be here either.' He gets up and walks out. So there's me and Robin. We put the drums down and we got the vocals down.
I'm going crazy, I'm losing sleep.
Rick loathed the song. He hated it so much when he first heard the demo. He yanked it from the tape player, threw it down on the ground, and crushed the cassette beneath the heel of his boot. And then he stormed out. However, the next day, Rick softened up and he agreed to play some guitar on this track. Then Tom laid down his parts as well. As producer Richie Zito remembers it, the band overall didn't want to do the song. They had some intense arguments about it. That's probably what fueled the passion of the song. But Zito would say that the song became like a little crusade for him. And to turn the tide, he had the members of the band record their parts just one at a time. He started with Robin and a keyboard player. He said, "I figured if I was going to expose the band to this song, it had better be as right for Robin." It became obvious that the song was tailor-made for him. And then one by one, the rest of the guys came in and did it. Now here's the thing. How could you not find something to like in Robin Zander's hair-raising vocal? I mean, he kills it on this song. One of the best power ballad vocals of the decade, even if you don't like power ballads.
Wherever you go, I'll be with you.
When Cheap Trick played the song for the label and their manager, they got a lot of positive feedback. Everyone told him how great it was. So the guys started to, embrace it a little. Said Rick, the reason I hated it, as the story goes, is that it was the 10th song where the record company and producer said, you've got to record this. It was just sheer fatigue from dealing with songs that weren't really our own.
Whatever you want, I'll give it to you.
The man was understandably burned out from performing other people's music, virtually relegated to being a guest composer on his own record. Enough was enough already. Rick would say something like, if this one was so good, why didn't they do it first? And he has a point. But I don't think anyone could have nailed this vocal like Robin Zander in that moment. I mean, maybe Steve Perry, maybe Lou Grant, maybe Brad Delp, because Boston was coming back. But that's about it at that moment.
To lay your heart and head upon.
Although The Flame may have been the last song recorded for Lap of Luxury, after its release, it would forever have a #1 next to its name. Not only did it drop as the first single for the record, but like I mentioned earlier, it went to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, stayed there for 2 weeks. This was really big. Cheap Trick hadn't had a top 10 single on the Hot 100 since I Want You to Want Me peaked at #7 in '79, almost 10 years before. Additionally, The Flame also reached #1 on the Cashbox chart, went to #3 in the Billboard Mainstream Rock chart. Now, surprisingly, it barely broke the top 30 on the AC charts, the Adult Contemporary chart. It came in at #29. Look Away was a #1 hit on the Hot 100. It also went to #1 in the Adult Contemporary chart. Did not do well on the rock charts. I find it interesting how two songs similar in tone can achieve two completely different results based on the bands who performed them on different charts. Because Cheap Trick was a more rock-oriented band, of course. The Flame did well on the mainstream rock chart, but it stalled on the AC chart. I think if Soft Rockers Chicago had recorded it, you'd probably seen the opposite effect.
Look away, baby, look away. Remember after the fire, after all the rain.
Rounding out the chart statistics, The Flame went to #77 in the UK. Surprised about that. 32 in West Germany, #11 in New Zealand. Went to #1 in Australia, though. It was hit and miss around the world, but it had a great run. Since its heyday in the late 80s, though, The Flame has practically become a pop culture no-show. Of course, it's turned up in the 80s nostalgia pack series The Goldbergs, but really not much else. I find that a little surprising. After all, 80s power ballads are consistently being used in a lot of high-profile movies and TV shows, from Stranger Things, back in the day Glee did stuff like that, to The Office, Family Guy, Hot Tub Time Machine. The Flame is truly a great 80s power ballad. It should be featured a lot more. Likewise, covers of the song, they're sparse as well. So Aaron Hamilton recorded a dance club-friendly version in 1998. That went to #12 on the dance chart. And in 2008, a remix of her version was released as The Flame 08. Really, though, that's kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel.
I will be the flame.
You know what? Though no one can really touch Zander on this song, so, why cover it? That might be it. Incidentally, The Flame is also one of the rare exceptions to the 80s rule, don't release a power ballad as your lead single. You gotta always come out rocking. Now, we've covered this in the past, but I'll just point out that at the time, the formula for rock band commercial success was to release, a high-intensity single first, preferably 2 maybe, then drop your power ballad for maximum effect to keep the album going. Maintain the credibility of your male audience while also pulling in the female listeners for a nice commercial payday. But Cheap Trick, they dropped The Flame first. I guess maybe it's a different story when you're plotting a comeback and you need that big hit. Regardless, it worked for them. It became one of only 3 power ballads to reach the #1 spot in '88. The other two were, of course, Poison's Every Rose Has Its Thorn, and Def Leppard hit number 1 with Love Bites.
See, every rose has its thorn.
The Flame was perfectly calculated to make a big-time commercial mark at the height of the power ballad era. That platinum moment in Cheap Trick's history, it was not lost on the band. Commenting on the Flame's success, Tom Peterson said, "I think it reaffirmed our faith in ourselves. So good to have people say, yeah, we like your music." I think the band had kind of lost that sense of appreciation. More recently, Rick Nielsen, who had once grounded the demo into oblivion under his heel, he called The Flame a terrific song. Robin sings it great, my solo's not too bad, it's good, probably more good than bad on it. He even said that he wished the band had written the song. That's cool. But all in all, he and the rest of the band were happy with the success of the song, and they learned not to begrudge it. The thing about The Flame is, for me and a lot of 80s kids, kind of a classic. It's one of those junior high dance classics, school dances. Gave me the nerve to ask a few of my crushes to dance at those. I even called up our radio station, Z103 in Idaho. I sent it out as a dedication to a girl that I had the hots for. I remember that I loved that high note that Robin Zander hit, in the finale so much. No matter how many times I heard it when I was younger, my fist just went straight up as soon as he hit it. One time I got the nerve to ask this girl to dance when I requested, or asked the DJ to play this at school dance. I was really nervous and we were dancing, the song was playing, and I remember just thinking, man, I hope he plays the shorter radio version that doesn't have that high note in it, because this girl is gonna think I'm nuts. I'm not gonna be able to control this. Sure enough, I get into the song. It was the long version, and as soon as Robin Zander slung that note with perfection, my fist pumped up. Went so fast I almost punched the girl in the face. She thought I was insane. What are you gonna do though? It's the power of Robin Zander. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Cheap Trick and The Flame. I'm serious, I can't control it. AC/DC, there's just certain songs where my fist is here all the time. It's what my body does. If you dig our content, we would love to have you subscribe below. Leave some comments. Let's talk about this song. What did you think about the power ballad? What did you think of Cheap Trick's comeback? Let's have a great discussion below. What do you think about the power ballad? Should it be brought back? Should these bands do that? I kind of missed the power ballad in this auto-tune crazy situation we're living in now. Let us know. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth.